Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. You see, everyone wants to be wealthy, healthy, and fulfilled. But most people never take the first real step. Why? Because discipline is inconvenient. It's uncomfortable. It asks you to delay pleasure, to outlast excuses, to push past emotion. But let me tell you something that changed my life. Discipline is the ultimate form of self-respect. It says, I value my future more than my impulses. So don't just wish to be wealthy, focused, or respected. Train for it. Show up for it. Sweat for it. Because success doesn't come to the most talented, it comes to the most consistent. And consistency is discipline in disguise. Now, let me show you the 7 techniques that can take you from scattered to structured, from hoping to building, step by step. I used to think that discipline came after success. That somehow once you had the big paycheck, the fancy job, the growing bank account, then you'd become responsible. Then you'd start saving, investing, budgeting. But let me tell you what changed my life. I discovered it works in reverse. Success is attracted by discipline. And if you wait for money to become disciplined, you'll never have either. When I was broke, flat broke, I learned one of the most important lessons of my life. You don't manage money when you have a lot. You manage it when you have a little. I remember one day staring at a crumpled $10 bill in my wallet. That was it. My last bit of cash. And I asked myself, how would a wealthy person treat this $10? The answer wasn't spending it, it was respecting it. So I saved a little, tracked it, watched where it went. I treated it like it mattered because it did. It was the training ground for more. If you're waiting for a raise before you start budgeting, you're already behind. If you think investing is for when you make 6 figures, think again. Wealth doesn't come from what you make, it comes from what you do with what you make. That's discipline. Start where you are. Save something, anything. Transfer $5 into a separate account. Open a little investment app and drop in what you'd normally waste on fast food. Track your spending today, not when it's more exciting, but when it's boring. Discipline isn't about volume, it's about principle. And the principle is simple. He who is faithful with little will be made ruler over much. You don't get wealthy because you stumbled onto money, you get wealthy because you practice the behaviors that would have worked at any level. That's the test. So build the habits now. Prepare the container before the water comes. When the money arrives, and it will, you'll be ready to keep it, grow it, and multiply it. Because discipline practiced early creates wealth sustained later. When I started turning my life around, it wasn't because someone handed me a better plan. It was because I finally got a clearer picture. A picture of what I didn't want, and then a picture of what I did. See, discipline is tough when it's floating. You wake up and someone says, be more disciplined. Well, that's good advice, but it's vague. Discipline must be anchored to something. You can't just say, I'll stop spending recklessly. You have to say, I'm going to live debt-free. I'm going to walk through life unburdened. I'm going to retire early and wake up on my schedule. Now that gives discipline a face, a name, a reason. Discipline isn't about punishment, it's about vision. I remember when I was young and broke, working hard but going nowhere. I was a master of effort, but a beginner in purpose. Then I got around some mentors, people who showed me what their discipline bought them: freedom, options, dignity. That's when I started to get it. I didn't need more willpower, I needed more vision. A reason to say no to the candy, the couch, the unnecessary purchase. I started visualizing the man I could become. A man who owned his morning, his time, his money, his future. Every time I set the alarm a little earlier, every time I read instead of scrolling, every time I transferred $20 into savings instead of spending it, I'd remind myself, this is the price I pay for that future I see so clearly. And when the vision is clear, the behavior begins to take care of itself. The clarity of your destination gives power to your direction. You won't stay disciplined for long if the reward isn't alive in your mind. So if you want to master discipline, don't just try harder, see better. Define the future so clearly that you can touch it in your imagination. Then bring your habits into alignment with that vision. Because when the why is strong, the how becomes automatic. One of the greatest shifts in my life came the moment I stopped treating discipline like a mood and started treating it like a rule. See, winners don't wake up and negotiate with the day. They don't check the weather, check their feelings, or check what's trending before deciding how to behave. Winners live by standards, clear, sharp, non-negotiable standards. They don't ask, do I feel like saving today? They save. They don't wonder, should I read today? They read. Because they've already made the decision long before the day began. Years ago, I was mentoring a young man who had all the talent in the world, but he had no standards. He had goals, yes, and dreams and big ambitions, but he was always drifting. One day he'd do the work, the next he'd skip it. So I asked him, what are your daily non-negotiables? He stared at me blankly. That's when I knew the problem. You can't trust motivation. It comes and goes. But discipline built on standards, that's dependable. That's the foundation. So I had him write out 3 simple, clear daily actions, just 3. 1 for the mind, 1 for the body, 1 for his money. Something like, read 10 pages every morning, exercise for 30 minutes, and save $10 a day, no exceptions. Not big goals, just daily standards. Not dreams, disciplines. And you know what happened? His whole life changed. He became consistent. And consistency is where the magic happens. You see, the goal isn't to feel good every day. The goal is to do what builds the life you want, especially on the days you don't feel like it. When your actions are tied to standards, not feelings, you remove the daily debate. You just do it, like brushing your teeth or locking your front door. It's automatic, unquestioned. That's the power of non-negotiables. You don't rise to the level of your dreams. You fall to the level of your standards. So raise them and make them non-negotiable. One of the biggest reasons people struggle with discipline isn't because they're lazy. It's because their structure is weak. They're chasing the day instead of directing it. They make to-do lists that never get done. They scribble ideas in notebooks they never follow, and they wonder why they're always behind. But the problem isn't the dream. The problem is the lack of design. Discipline thrives when it's given a home. And the best home you can give your discipline is your calendar. I learned this lesson early on when I was juggling several business pursuits. My list was endless, my days chaotic, and my progress stalled. Then one day someone wiser than me asked, "Where's your time living?" I didn't understand. He said, "If your goals aren't in your calendar, they're just good intentions. Make time visible." And that changed everything. So instead of writing read on a list, I started blocking it. 6:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. That was my reading time, not optional. Instead of writing follow-up on prospects, I'd block 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. prospect time. Like a doctor's appointment or a flight, you don't miss it, you don't move it, you protect it. Because it's a meeting with your future. To-do lists are emotional, they invite negotiation. But a calendar is factual. It says at 3 p.m., you do this. And once I started assigning time, discipline stopped feeling like willpower and started looking like a plan. That's the difference between wishes and systems. Wishes don't require a clock. Systems do. And here's the beauty. When you schedule time in advance, you reduce the friction. You don't spend energy wondering what to do. You just show up and do it. Time blocking isn't just about productivity, it's about respect. Respecting your goals enough to give them room in your life. Because if you don't run your day will run you. And guess what? It never runs in your favor. So forget the never-ending lists. Open your calendar. Start placing your future right there in ink. Because discipline, real discipline, doesn't live on paper. It lives in the hours you guard. When I was just starting out, I thought discipline was a personal matter. I figured if I could just grit my teeth hard enough, set my alarm early enough, push myself harder than yesterday, I'd make it. And I did up to a point. But then I hit a ceiling. Not because I wasn't willing to work harder, but because I hadn't changed who I was around. See, discipline doesn't grow in isolation. It grows in environments where it's respected, modeled, and expected. And that's when I learned your discipline will rise or fall to the level of your environment. If you're surrounded by people who sleep in, slack off, and shrug off their goals, don't be surprised when you do the same. On the other hand, spend 1 week with the man who runs at 5 a.m., reads at 6 a.m., and reviews his goals before most people have had their first cup of coffee, and suddenly you feel lazy just standing still. That's the power of proximity. Association is not just who you spend time with, it's who you become while you're with them. I began to borrow the structure of the people I admired. If they journaled in the morning, I tried it. If they tracked their net worth monthly, I did the same. I didn't even know what I was doing at first. I just borrowed their system until I made it mine. And something incredible happened. My standards began to shift. What once felt like discipline began to feel normal. Because when excellence is the standard in the room, average becomes uncomfortable. Discipline is contagious. Hang around chaos, you adopt chaos. But walk with clarity, and soon enough you'll start to crave order. The key is to place yourself near those who take their lives seriously, who treat each hour like it matters, who sharpen their minds and guard their calendars, borrow their habits, study their routines. Let their discipline mentor yours until you no longer need permission to live a high standard life. Because at the end of the day, you don't just become what you plan, you become who you're around. One of the biggest reasons people drift from discipline is because they never feel the pain of breaking it. You miss a workout, nothing really happens. You skip your savings plan, life goes on. But over time, these little breaks in discipline become cracks in the foundation. And then one day you look up and wonder how things got off track. It wasn't the big decisions that ruined your progress, it was the lack of consequence behind the small ones. See, human nature avoids discomfort. And without discomfort, we rarely change. That's why if you want to get serious about discipline, you've got to create consequences. If you say you'll read 10 pages a day and you don't, there has to be a price. Maybe you pay a friend $5 every time you miss, or you make yourself double the reading tomorrow. If you skip your savings goal, transfer double the amount the next day. Not because the money is the point, but because your word is. Years ago, when I was struggling to stay consistent with my morning routine, I told a friend, if I'm not up by 6 a.m., I'll send you $50. And wouldn't you know, I didn't miss another morning. Why? Because there was now a cost attached to laziness. I put something at stake. And when there's something to lose, you start thinking twice before you slack off. Discipline grows best in structured pressure. The kind of pressure you create for yourself, not the world forcing it on you, but you stepping up and saying, if I want to live free, I must train myself to live focused. And nothing sharpens focus like consequences. You begin to treat your commitments with seriousness. You begin to build self-trust. Not because you're perfect, but because you've installed a system that won't let you drift too far without feeling it. Because discipline at its core isn't just about motivation, it's about integrity. And if you want to live a life of integrity, start making your promises cost you something when they're broken. There's something powerful about the words, just one more rep at the gym, one more page in the book, one more dollar saved when you wanted to spend it. You see, discipline isn't often about grand gestures or heroic effort. It's about the quiet decision in the smallest of moments to go just a little further than you feel like going. That's where the edge is sharpened. That's where average ends and exceptional begins. Now, I've always said, the difference between those who make it and those who don't isn't usually talent or luck, it's endurance. And not endurance for miles and miles, but for one more step, one more push, one more day of consistency. That's the discipline that compounds. That's the discipline that pays. When I started my journey, I was broke, discouraged, and almost ready to quit. But every time I hit that wall, I would whisper to myself, just one more door knocked. One more phone call, one more event, and those one more moments stacked up. They built character, they built stamina, and eventually they built results. See, comfort will always offer you an exit. It'll say, that's enough. You've done a lot today. But discipline answers back, just a little more and I'll be further than I've ever been. That's what separates a person who talks about change from the one who lives it. Not in giant leaps, but in persistent nudges, one more call, one more hour of focus, one more refusal to give in. And here's what happens when you honor the power of one more. You begin to trust yourself. You start showing up stronger the next time because you remember what you're capable of. You're not trying to conquer the year or the week, just the next 5 minutes. And that momentum, as small as it feels, is the beginning of massive change. So the next time you feel like quitting, remind yourself that excellence is almost always on the other side of one more. Go there. That's where discipline becomes destiny. Now let me tell you something that's often misunderstood. Discipline isn't about rigidity. It's not some cold mechanical routine that never bends or breathes. No, discipline is alive. It's something you refine, adjust, tune like an instrument. And the key to that refinement? Weekly reflection. Every 7 days you sit down with yourself, not to beat yourself up, not to wallow in what went wrong, but to learn, to sharpen, to grow. The disciplined life is not about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about noticing when you're off course and correcting it while it's still a small drift, not when it becomes a shipwreck. I used to do this on Sunday nights. I'd grab my journal and I'd ask myself 3 simple questions. What worked this week? What slipped? And what do I need to adjust going forward? That habit done consistently became one of the most profitable things I ever did. Why? Because it stopped me from drifting too far. Because it taught me how to course correct before the damage got deep. Most people don't fail from one bad day. They fail from not noticing 10 bad days in a row. But when you take time once a week to look back honestly, without drama, you catch the pattern early. You see that you skipped your reading 3 times, that your spending crept up, that your energy dipped. And then you make small tweaks. You revise. You upgrade your approach. You evolve. That's the secret most people miss. Discipline isn't a set of iron rules. It's a system of intelligent review. You can't improve what you don't examine. You can't grow what you don't measure. So don't just work hard, work smart. Let your past week be your teacher, not your judge. Because mastery doesn't come from doing something perfectly. Once it comes from doing it imperfectly, adjusting wisely, and repeating it with better clarity. That's the rhythm. That's how discipline evolves. That's how discipline turns into results. Now let me leave you with something worth thinking about. Discipline is not punishment. It's not about restrictions or suffering. It's a gift, an act of self-respect. It says, I believe my future is worth protecting. I believe my life is worth structuring. That's a powerful declaration. Because here's the truth. Without discipline, dreams stay dreams. But with discipline, they become schedules, they become habits, they become results. You see, discipline is the great separator. It's the difference between those who wish and those who build, between the ones who watch others succeed and the ones who step into success themselves. And the beauty is you don't have to master it all today. You only have to begin one habit, one new standard, one honest review of your week. The small steps compound. So I challenge you, before the day ends, decide on one thing, just one discipline you will honor. Whether it's saving $10 a day, waking up 30 minutes earlier, or planning your week on Sunday night, set it. Keep it. Let that one small victory build trust with yourself. Because trust in yourself, that's the foundation. Without it, no plan matters. With it, every goal becomes possible. Start now. Not next month. Not next year. Discipline delayed is success denied. Let today be the day you draw the line.